probably wondering how the Americans and British came to fight here at Saratoga. We will soon learn about the major players in this battle and how the Americans achieved such a decisive victory over the British. But first, let's take it back to the start. Before we talk about Saratoga, why don't you introduce yourselves?
I'm John Burgoyne, if you didn't know that already. I was a British general who fought in the Battle of Saratoga. I was born in 1722 in Bedfordshire, England. After I received my education, I joined the military and married Lord Charlotte Stanley, the daughter of the Earl of Derby. The Earl despised me and even paid me money to disband the marriage. Instead, I used the money to buy a captaincy in the branch of the army I was in. I foolishly spent all the money and was forced to move to France with my wife, deeply in debt. I spent 7 years in France, and the Earl eventually warmed up to me, offering me a captaincy in the army. I was promoted to colonel, and my men gave me the nickname Gentleman Johnny for the disciplined way I led them. During my military career, I served in Parliament and also started a career as a playwright. I believe it was 1775 when I was promoted to Major General.
I'm Benedict Arnold. I was born in Norwich, Connecticut in 1741. My father was a wealthy businessman until the death of 3 of his children got the best of him. He then became a heavy drinker, forcing us into a deep debt. A fool he was. I was always inspired by war and fighting for a cause. At just 16 years old, I enlisted into the military to fight against the French. I believe it was around 1764 when I formed a partnership with merchant Adam Babcock. It wasn't until I established trade connections with the West Indies when I realized the unfair restriction and taxes enacted by the British. I then joined the Sons of Liberty, ready to fight for the people.
I'm Horatio Gates, the American general who was victorious at Saratoga. I was actually born in Britain in 1727. I spent a few years in the British Army, but I came to America because I couldn't get a promotion. Here, I realized that the Crown was treating the colonists poorly and took up a military position in the Continental Army. It was hard to fight against my own country, but I believed in the American cause.
Mind telling us about the events that led up to Saratoga?
You should really let me explain these events, as I did single-handedly defeat Burgoyne.
Actually, I was responsible for the victory at Saratoga.
You have to cut us some slack for our rebellious actions. King George was constantly taxing us, and we didn't even have the rights of Englishmen. Trust me, I would know, as I was born in England. After the Tea Party, things started to pick up for us Americans. We won a few battles at Lexington and Concord, and Thomas Paine got our citizens fired up with the publication of Common Sense.
It also sparked the idea of independence and paved the way for the Declaration later to come. However, not all Americans were on board with this cause. Some colonists remained loyal to the Crown, splitting the population of the colonies. We then pushed the British out of Boston, sparking the morale of the citizens' militiamen.
And if I remember correctly, it was just a few months later that we wrote our Declaration of Independence.
After our defeat at Long Island, Washington took the troops across the Delaware, surprising a few drunk Hessians at Trenton.
I didn't approve of this plan, but I guess Washington just got lucky at Trenton.
John, you fought in the Battle of Fort Ticonderoga shortly before Saratoga, correct?
Oh, I didn't just fight. I commanded our forces and we forced the colonists out with ease. This victory gave me a sense of confidence going into Saratoga.
So how did you decide that your next move would be to go to Saratoga?
Well, when I returned to England from reinforcing General Guy Carleton in Quebec, I proposed my plan to win the war. Moving south from Canada, I was hoping to weaken the Americans by capturing New York and the Hudson River. This would allow us to cut off New England from the southern colonies, which would have given us a huge advantage.
Why didn't this plan work out for you?
The stupidity of General William Howe ruined the whole plan.
Could you tell us what happened?
I told him and General Barry St. Ledger to meet me in Albany. Instead, Howe foolishly abandoned the plan and went to capture Philadelphia. Henry Clinton even sent me a letter ridiculing Howe and praising my move. Without the special reading device or mask, the letter gives false information in case it was intercepted. But with the mask, it says that General Clinton was left to command here with too small a force to make any effectual diversion in your favor. He says he shall try to do something at any rate. It may be of use to you. I think Sir William's move just at this time was the worst he could take. Much joy in your success.
Benedict and Horatio, how did you guys end up in Saratoga?
I took my forces here to regroup after the loss at Fort Ticonderoga.
I was sent by Washington because I was his best commander.
Who cares? Washington is an idiot. If I was in command, the war would have ended a long time ago.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there were 2 small battles that made up Saratoga.
Yes, I won the first one at Freeman's Farm, but it was at a cost. We lost twice as many men as the rebels did. It was a pain to get troops as we moved south from our base in
Freeman's
Canada.
Farm where I finally convinced you to take risks.
Well, your tactics didn't work out because we were still forced to retreat.
I was pouring on the attack and cutting off their flanking runs until you ordered us to retreat. Couldn't handle the pressure, could you, Granny Gates? But it was the second battle where things fell apart.
Pretty much everything went wrong for me at the second battle in Bemis Heights. William Howe ruined my plan by going to attack Philadelphia instead of Saratoga. Again, an idiotic decision. I was already low on men and supplies, as he took most of the army. It didn't help that we lost a bunch of men in the battle just before this. If I had all the men I planned for, I would have easily beaten the rebels.
And for you two, what led to your success in the second battle at Bemis Heights?
Burgoyne was cocky coming off his win at Fort Ticonderoga, and we had killed a bunch of his troops in the previous battle. This, along with my excellent leadership skills, is why we beat the British.
You didn't lead anyone. While you were hiding in your tent, I led our troops to battle. We were the ones who captured the British strong points and forced them to retreat, not you. I even took a bullet in the leg for our country, while you chose to cowardly hide from the fight. And Benedict, where did you force the British to retreat to? Saratoga. This is where Burgoyne finally surrendered 10 days later. Many of my colleagues are even saying that this victory will be a major turning point in the war.
I believe it will be the turning point in the war.
And what did you get out of this victory?
Me specifically, I was given command of our southern forces. I also got a letter from Washington personally congratulating me. I didn't care for what he had to say, as he is a fool of a commander. By this opportunity, I do myself the pleasure to congratulate you on the signal success of the army under your command in compelling General Burgoyne and his whole force to surrender themselves prisoners of war.
You should receive that letter of congratulations. I'm sick of this lack of recognition, and I'm losing my desire to keep fighting for this army. I have a letter here from Washington saying that you didn't inform him of your plans following Saratoga. He says that he has not received a single line from General Gates.
Why would I need to tell Washington? He would probably just mess up my plans anyway.
What about you, John?
I, along with my men, were held and paroled in Boston for a winter. We were eventually all returned to Britain. I was intensely scrutinized and retreated out of the public eye to focus on my career as a playwright.
Moving beyond personal matters, what were the effects of the battle?
For one, we finally were able to convince the French to aid us. I guess this showed them that we weren't just a joke of an army.
The French gave us plenty of supplies. Our troops were starving and cold, so they gave us food and clothes. This made our troops feel a little better about the war and definitely saved some from abandoning the cause.
Although we lost at Saratoga, our superior army will surely defeat this hopeless band of savages in the war.
On John Burgoyne's return to England, he was intensely criticized and blamed for the loss at Saratoga. Burgoyne re-entered the political scene, but had little impact and later focused on his passion for writing plays. In 1786, he produced his most successful play, The Heiress. Gates was discovered in a plot to replace Washington as head of the Continental Army with himself. This came from Gates' belief that Washington was an insufficient leader. Gates was later removed from his command after his defeat at Camden in 1780. Benedict Arnold went on to marry Peggy Shippen, who was the daughter of a loyalist sympathizer. Peggy met with John Andre during the British occupation and developed communication with the British soldiers. Benedict Arnold also began to interact with Andre. Arnold's lack of recognition and love for Peggy contributed to his switch to the British side. He provided them with locations of troops and supply depots. Later on, Andre was caught holding papers detailing Arnold's role in the surrender of West Point. Andre was hanged by the Americans. Although Arnold's abandonment hurt the Americans, it also sparked the morale within the troops. Due to the Americans' passion for their cause, quality leadership, and alliance with France, they were able to defeat the British. The war finally ended with the British surrender at Yorktown. Although the war didn't change the role of women or end slavery, it inspired new ideas of freedom, equality, and democracy.